rather me keep this off the camera?
We see
Sorry. We just call it apple juice.
Yeah, apple.
Underground apple juice.
Underground apple. Right. All right, we're coming up on Zoom.
Okay.
We'll get ready to get.
Okay. I'm here.
It's 12 noon. Go ahead and get started. It's Lloyd there from Radio. Thanks for joining us here on our first webinar presentation. It's called Why We Call It Underground. And a lot of times we have underground. And we wonder what exactly does that mean. We have conversations about the music. I know at least the music. We have a lot of conversations around the music. And we kick that term underground around a whole lot. So we'll be discussing that. And we're so glad to join us and take time out of your day. Weekend, because you're doing some most great appreciation here. And we're gonna look at doing this on a regular basis. Where we interact with our listening audience and kind of just have some chats about some things that are on our minds. So in essence, we'll be cutting the music off and talking a little more depth behind the scenes, what this music actually is for, why we do what we do. So joining me on the call today, Walter, Chicago House Radio. Y'all do know I'm doing Operation Underground here on Saturday afternoon at 3 p.m. And mind you, he will be on this afternoon at 3 p.m. As we get everything set up and wrap up presentation here. That's the Jack Wagon, Walter, my buddy. Turntable brother. So it's doing our thing that friends a few weeks ago. That's where that pick comes from. We're doing our thing, but he's going to be on the call. We're going to get his thoughts and analysis on the word underground. He uses the term quite often. We don't take it lightly. It's actually a meaning to it. Why we use such terminology when we're doing our work production. So what's our purpose of having a presentation webinar? Well, the whole thing is, we at Chicago Radio trying to find some different avenues to bring you guys some great content besides the wonderful music that we provide in our radio show. And an element that I thought was missed that have an opportunity to bring the music off and talk about the production side. Behind the scenes of making the music, the thoughts and analysis of the DJ. What is actually on DJ's mind, making their music, or creating a mix? What are the elements that go into making a mix? I know I have a certain method put my mixes together, and what I play on get down, and it's really something that started when I started making mixes WKKC on college radio. And we were recording cassette tapes. And so the music your mixes had you wanted to be on point. So to make the best mixes, I would kind of rehearse my mix, get the stuff together ahead of time. Kind of had an idea what I was like. So we're doing the cassette tape, and eventually we moved over to spinning live on the radio station. So you know. You have to know what you play, at least have an idea how the record went, where you want to mix in and mix out. So that's kind of how I went about my mixing. Other DJs, and female DJs as well. They have their own way of putting mixes together, but that's the way I've been doing it. Providing content. The whole thing is want to go behind the scenes and talk to some of the talented artists out there that are making this music that we're buying it and that we collecting and getting each other. How did you come up with this stuff? Do you consider your music? We're going to have these conversations here on Stop Radio. And kind of deal with that. We got a lot of artists that's been on the stage that produce music themselves. I'm being one of those people. I produce music. And I use MPC, Reason, Ableton, stuff like that to come up with stuff. So we'll be talking about that. Putting beats together, things like that. People be wanting to know. I know you as the audience, you want to know about doing these things. Talk about that. And we're gonna have the DJs tell their where they came up at. How you started spinning, what areas you spinning in. I remember the day when we would get index card, and it would put a big W on. You can contest to that. It's called dollar parties. And somebody would have a party in their basement. You would have to have the index card to get in. That was like your invite. We had plug and wires, but the index card would be on there, and it would get you into the party. So I remember those kind of days and stuff like that. Those were my early experiences with DJing and party. You know, I have what it's like DJing on radio with tad. What is underground music? You know, we hear this term a lot. We wonder about underground music. Well, to me, underground music is the music that's not being played first. So in other words, you turn on your radio and hear a lot of this good music. I mean, really good music. Radio stations really have the pick the top 30 songs in rotation every day. Underground stuff is on airtime. It's not played in the nightclubs. You don't hear it in the elevator. You don't hear it on your favorite television commercial. You're not hearing the stuff in the movies. But you can hear somebody riding past a car maybe, having a listening session, silent parties like that. But we're talking about good music. And so we call it underground, not up on the surface. Some good stuff with earth shattering, not hearing it. And we at Chicago Radio play a lot of stuff considered underground. And that's what house music. But underground music, in essence, is more than just house music. Have a lot of hip hop music that's underground. And alternative rock stuff like that. Underground is just a lot of good music that's not getting not heard as often as something that's being rotated on the radio station. A lot of this stuff out of demand. Can't really do a lot about it. Just deal with program practice stations and they decide what music is on rotation, radio station. A lot of underground stuff, a lot of stuff that we get on a weekly basis, mail, or we get direct artists. A lot of this stuff, it doesn't get played as often as it should. Mind you, a lot of stuff on your daily gets a lot of material that comes out. I wish I could it all, but it's just not enough time today. So we try to have a regular rotation where you can look on Live 365, my streaming service, and you can see the title of the song and the artist that made it, and maybe some picks, quick picks, JPEG, something the album cover. So that when you go to the record store, you can pick that stuff out and make one add a collection. And that's really the whole idea. But you understand. Most of this music it will not go remain unfortunately the type of airplay that should. That's unfortunate. But a lot of us, especially at Chicago Radio, we play the stuff. We put it in our mix. We out doing parties. Play it. And Vodka, you gotta remember back in the cassette tape days, we would get tracks that were hot off the press.
Yeah.
Stuff that somebody just done. I get a lot of Paul Johnson stuff, Robert Armani. We would bring stuff to radio, and they'd be on cassette.
Yeah.
But we had a four-track cassette deck that had the pitch control on it. We played the stuff in the more records that were out at the time. We were playing these undiscovered underground tracks. They wouldn't actually released, but this was the way so that the artists kind of test out, kind of have a litmus test. Kind of have somewhat of an idea of how well the track would do. So we would play this stuff on ammo. The response a lot of times would be amazing. Like, what was that track you played with that song? And the track went. We didn't know the name of it. So we tried to imitate it. But people would actually call the radio station and try to describe some stuff playing.
We actually made names up.
It was good. It was really good. A lot of stuff was just underground. That artist at that time, he knew maybe you need to go back and make the track, or whatever you do. At some point, you need to be able to put that stuff out because it's good stuff. And that's what we got with college stations, man. I know here in Chicago. I worked at WKKC 89.3. We had WNUR covered the north side of Chicago. WNUR played underground stuff. A lot of stuff didn't get a whole lot of airplay. Played a lot of music, and they had to go to DJs playing stuff. And I know KKC had a couple of radio shows playing what's turned now underground music. A lot of music. It was released on record labels, stuff like that. But we were playing it, but major stations would touch it. So I know we would take a regular house and play it in heavy rotation like the records. So you would hear it along with Prince or the Michael Jackson or the regular stuff being played on the radio. Regular stuff on the radio. Regular house. We'll take later and play it like a regular song. And so 2 o'clock on Monday afternoon, you can turn on KKC and hear a record like later. 117, who they call it, whatever. We have regular records and regular rotation. So that's the beauty of college radio. Some of the underground stuff like that. You had some stations that play underground music. I do recall WBMX 102.7 at the big show. Saturday night, Friday night. Harley the Hot guys playing a lot of underground material. A lot of stuff released on the independent record label out of Chicago. A lot of stuff we're getting played. BMX, PCI in Chicago. They also had mix shows as well. The DJs as well as some of the stations up in New York. He did play. Definitely the nightclub in the Windy City, the warehouse, Smart Bar, Red, these kind of places. DJs come in and they would have this exclusive music. People just go crazy. They would hear this stuff, man. And when it take the stuff on it. So these are a few of the labels that putting out something underground. Whatever I am into the record for record shops. I see coming off strictly records. Some of these labels, I automatically just go and I didn't have a lot of time to listen to it. I know the stuff good. Even currently now, artists and certain record labels, I just get it. I cut because I know the material is good. it's stuff that I like. The audience that I play for, I was still a kid. I had a problem. Every time I see the CD, I automatically I just five. So you on board?
Yes. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, man. So, man, tell us a little bit about yourself. What do you think about the word underground?
Well, first of all, Lloyd, thanks for having me here, and thanks for everyone that's taking the time to listen and tune in to this, because this is a great thing here. Underground music. I think you summed it up. Something or music that's not played on mainstream radio typically, but I think there's another element to underground, which when it's not readily available, when you can't turn on the radio to hear it, it creates a certain mystique. It also creates a demand for that song or that track. You hear it once in someone's mix that was maybe in a club recording, or one of these classic places you hear of the music box. You know, Ron Hardy, and hopefully everyone on here knows who Ron Hardy is. I don't think he really needs an introduction. We used to have these tapes called bootleg tapes. So I know I was too young to go to the music box. I tell everybody I wish I had the opportunity to go at least one time. And I've heard stories about people partying in the music box. Well, Ron Hardy, of course, along with other DJs, get unreleased music, as you mentioned, Lloyd, and test it out in one of the top places to go listen to house music in the city, the music box. There's people out there and dancing, you know, with a tape recorder in their pocket, and they should have had it in there, but when Ron Hardy takes the bass out and brings it back in, or he does something, you get the crowd effect that you can hear the people screaming or yelling, or "All right, Ronnie." Well, that song or those songs that were played that you don't hear on the radio, and you as the house music fan out there dancing, you hear it. You go through your week now. It's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and that song comes back to your mind. Where can you go hear it? I don't know the name of it. I've never heard that on BMX or KKC, as you mentioned. To me, that creates this mystique, this demand, and now it's underground. Because you can go to this club and you know this one DJ at least is going to be playing it. And to take that a step further, you had back in that day, I was a young up and coming DJ. I started doing this, you know, in grade school, and there were tracks and things that were being played that I would hear on these bootleg tapes, or someone else had, you know, an authentic tape that maybe a Frankie Knuckles or Ron Hardy made. And okay, I'm gonna go to the record store, see if I can find that. I want to buy that. I'm gonna buy 2 copies of it, because you know how we used to do back then.
Right.
Can't do it. So I think it all goes into the whole underground thing, because you got to take a step further. Not only can the average house music fan not hear that whenever they want it, but up and coming DJs, not all the DJs could get it. So certain DJs across the city had it, and that was almost like a hidden gem. It was like a piece of gold. You know what I mean? And I think that goes into that whole underground mystique.
Well, man, it was the second. I would just start from Paul Johnson, right off the drum machine, and I would take it and the guitars to it, man. Where you get that from? Who made it?
Yeah.
You can use this stuff, man. Like a survey, you can use it as information, man. But stats, you can say, okay, well, if I produce that track and you played it on the air, I could respond. Maybe this is something I might want to put out. If you played it, people like, man, it's all right. Yeah, maybe I can go back to the drawing board and just leave it alone, period. But the simple fact that we were playing a lot of unreleased stuff, it gave you a good indication if the track would do well. So that's what I loved about being on college radio. You had freedom to play whatever. Not to say that the guys that were on the main stage, they didn't have no freedom. Because a lot of them, I think Farley a lot of stuff and got away with it. And it wasn't an issue about that.
He wasn't the only one.
College radio had freedom and leverage. We didn't have to play the even though like with WKK, it was an urban R&B contemporary station. It played current music. So it wasn't to not play major stuff, popular stuff, but in addition to that, wanted to slip a nice bump and house we kind of brought everything out. I'm pleased with the radio today. It was just simple, along with the stuff that's out. I don't listen to major radio like that. Just imagine, I guess they can make Minaj and other stuff to make the music stuff that's being played. What if everything how much difference that are made with the music that's currently being played. What if really good house track out? We're getting some of that air. I think maybe the closest probably would get down here in Chicago would be like WBBM. They would probably be the closest or that, or maybe Mike close to some senators. For the most part, a lot of the stuff I would mind every now and then some on a regular basis. Three hits makes Barbara Tuck. Glenn Underground, Big Laughing, some of the stuff that they make every now and then on the radio, but unfortunately it just don't work like that. And I guess the style of stuff that we play and they really don't fit in nowadays. Stuff that you on the radio. They just design it that way. So that's what we love.
Yep.
So tell us about the kind of stuff that you play. Do you consider that you spin underground music?
Absolutely. But I wouldn't stop there. I know I play a lot of underground, especially on Chicago House Radio, and occasionally I'll appear out and about somewhere within the Chicagoland area. I get invited to play somewhere, and I'll try to incorporate some underground out there to introduce our listeners to some new music, because I think that's important for us as DJs to do. But as far as my style of music or what I play, it's not just underground, because we have to kind of, I think, stick to our roots as well with some of the classic disco, and then some of the classic commercial tracks that were being played on the radio back in the 80s, like when we were coming up, and 90s. To me, and this is another step on this conversation about underground, there's not a whole lot of house music being played on FM radio today. Not a whole lot. I'm not going to say none, because there may be a little here and there in pockets. Not much in Chicago, but maybe just a little. So, and correct me if I'm wrong, but this is just my thought on it. Just about all of the new music that's coming out every week, and Lloyd, just like you mentioned before, you're getting inbox folders with music from different artists. In a way, it's all underground, if you think about it, because none of it's really being played on the radio. So you almost have to either go out to hear it or get into one of these online stations like Chicago House Radio or something like that to hear one of the DJs actually slipping into one of their mixes. But to me, it's all underground at this point.
Yeah, I agree.
So style of music,
as far as the reach, jump in here. Let's take a look at track for see what they got out now.
Okay.
That's being played. Let's look at track for us. So much of this stuff.
Can you hear me, Lloyd?
I can.
Okay, if you don't mind, and I know maybe you had a plan here, but if you go towards the middle of the screen and you see DJ Top 10s. Okay. For our listeners, and I hope you don't mind me doing this, Lloyd. A lot of times, if I'm having, because I have a regular full-time job as well, if I'm running shorter time and I try weekly to look up what's coming out. If you go back to the last screen you were just at.
Okay.
The DJ Top 10s. Down there, you see DJ Spinner.
Yeah.
Okay, so if anybody knows, DJ Spinner is one of the DJs and producers that I love to listen to. I love his work. I admire and respect the work that he does. So if I see DJ Spinner has a top 10, to save some time, instantly I'm going to go in there and see what he has, what he's chosen that week. And sometimes it goes all the way up to 20, as you see with DJ Spinner.
Right.
You know what? I may take a scroll through what he's listening to, what he admires, because it's not just all his work. I just wanted to kind of throw that little thing in there because I do that typically a lot. Louis Vega, I'll do that too. Ralph Gum, I'll do that too.
Right.
Just to name a few people. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No. That's a good point. It's a good starting point for me as well. I definitely check out Ian Friday. Good stuff. Definitely. Because I kind of play a lot of his stuff. So I'll take a look at what's on this chart. Some of this stuff. Yes.
And really quick,
just a lot of this stuff that I'm familiar with.
Just to throw this in really quick.
That I play. There's a lot of good stuff in there, but this is a good resource. If you want to get caught up, get up real quick. This is a hot track right here. This one, Quantize. This Revolution. I just checked this out this morning, man. This is a hot track, man. Look at playing it this evening. This is definitely a hot track. Look at this list, man. There's some good stuff on there.
I see some other things on there that's gonna be on Operation Underground this afternoon. Hint.
Yeah, definitely good stuff, man. Beatport. There's some stuff on here, but I'm mostly to be honest, I'm on track source, but I have gotten stuff off Beatport. Well,
same here.
I have.
If I can't find it on the track source, I go to Beatport.
With the top 10, it's also my go-to, and I can jump in and kind of see what guys are playing in all the other stuff that I have, and kind of go through all that and kind of end up with what I'm going to play, by the time I get ready to go. So.
Right.
It's a good point. Please back in here. Get us back up. So yeah. There we go. Okay. So yeah. Track source definitely a good resource. And if I want to get caught up, the route I go. Now you mentioned some different styles of house that you play. It's not really all underground. So it will be some classic disco. I know we do crowd stuff that that's an opportunity to play some disco, some rare groove stuff, funk, a lot of stuff like that. I still buy vinyl. Time to time, my record shop. You had a journey lately. A trip to the record store. They got some stuff. Crowd pleasing. So
and I'm not gonna stop either. Talking to you and to for everybody out there, one of our crowd pleaser brothers. There's four brothers in the crowd pleaser crew, which you see two on the screen right now. And there's two others, Brian Johnson and Dion Bracken. And Dion and I took a journey to the record store recently here in Chicago, and so I think at this point I'm going to get back on board and getting my vinyl collection back up to where it was at one point in my life, where I lost a lot of it due to a couple of unfortunate events like flooding.
Right.
To name one. So I'm going to start actually doing more of that, and I have I'm making a concerted effort to make sure I get my vinyl collection back up to. I'll never be able to catch up with you, but I'll get there.
Hey man, you know, that's just one of those things, Mike. That's one of those things, man. So like you buy music online, how do you go about getting music?
Typically is TrackSource. That's my number one source of music is TrackSource. Okay. And if I can't find it on TrackSource, next is Beatport, and then there's Juno. Which I'll typically go on as well. I love a new source within the last few years, Bandcamp.
Yeah.
Go on there and search for artists, and a lot of times you'll see an artist on Bandcamp and they have all of their music. And you mentioned Glenn Underground. He has a nice page in Bandcamp where you can go in there and buy music. So that's quickly jumped ahead of a couple of sites I would look at. Actually, now after TrackSource, I might go to Bandcamp second over Beatport at times. So it just depends. But TrackSource is my number one. And if I get, if I'm lucky enough to get, a folder or some music from an artist, and it happens every so often, not as much as it does for you, then that's a good source as well. TrackSource. That's my number one.
Yeah, that's it, man. That's it. So I guess put up there. It seems that we this is our first one. We don't have anybody signed up for the webinar that room. Because at this point, we're going to take some questions from the audience.
Okay.
But what we'll do is we'll put the link up on social media so you guys can sign up and register. Or maybe just have this form where you can come in and don't have to sign up, but you can jump right in. And of course, we have the recording up on YouTube. We can check it out later. And then we can share it, put it up on Facebook and all that stuff. Link up there so that people can have it. But like I say, definitely the whole point. Getting together, spend a little time with the artists, and the DJs, just to kind of talk about what we do behind the scenes, outside of when you hit the music. A lot of times it's a lot of stories behind the scenes, putting these mixes together, putting these shows together, especially when we have guests. And a lot of times you have guests from your Operation Underground show. But what is it like getting together, getting DJs to come on to the show and be a part of Operation Underground? How do you go about doing that?
Well, as you know, we have many friends in the Chicagoland area as DJs, and you have more probably abroad. But the good thing is, you've built Chicago House Radio from the beginning and have been, I guess, the CEO and the owner. And it has a good reputation, and it's a great brand. So I think out here a lot of people associate me with you in Chicago House Radio. So when we were out at some of the events, typically I'm a part of the Attic Picnic, which thank you, Miss Wynell, for putting me on the Attic Picnic every year. You'll get to see some of the other DJs and artists out here just come and have a good time that day, and I get to conversate with some of them. And a lot of times, hey, what do you beyond this? What else are you doing? And I see your name on some flyers, and you still on Chicago House Radio? You got your show? Yeah, you know what? What do you do? Would you? I'm having guests on my show. I'm doing more guests. Is that something that you'd be interested in? Absolutely. And it kind of takes off from there. And I have some others that have said they would love to be on and be a guest, so I need to kind of get with them to get some of their mixes on, and maybe even we can do some live ones, which would be nice. Well, you were just on TrackSource, and I saw actually a couple of new ones that just came out that you just might hear this afternoon, starting at 3 p.m. Central Time on the new one. So it's typically underground, and I like to do this is something I like to do in my mixes is still give you a hint of a classic or two mixed in there. So you're gonna hear some underground mixed in, which I mean I don't know every DJ has their own style of how they play music, but I like to give you a hint to go back in the day and then bring you back in the underground and mix them both together a little bit. So, give you a little hint, you might hear classic in there as well.
Sounds like looking forward to it.
I have a question for you, if you don't mind.
Okay.
If you think back to when you first started mixing house music and DJing, what comes to your mind as your number one or your first, whether it was a classic disco, or one of the '80s house music joints that came out? What is one that grabs you as probably your first love or your first one that was your favorite?
Oh man, this is so lit. But me being a track electronic drum.
Okay.
117. Big Sean Star.
Okay.
It was like those were like I would have to mix at some point. I don't care what I'm playing. Disco. I'm playing just straight house. Electronic drum. 17 has I had to play it. And I finally retired 117. I finally put that record up, and I told myself, all right, just bag up all of it, leave it alone. And I'd say about a good 10 years now. I just relax. I play on 117. But I had to graduate. It's been tough, man. It's been real tough. Yeah. But I've been able to manage. I haven't picked it up in a while. So those are some of my favorites. Those two right there, man. It's what else do I play? It's I know I'm playing Victor Tominelli. Some track came out on Oda. And I play all the time. It was label. He sampled it. Sped it up a bit. Oh, I know. You sped it up.
I know what you're talking about.
It's just one of my favorite tracks. I would play that all the time. Like when this dude was playing that song, we always play that. It was one by 95 that came out on Motor. That I would play all the time. What was the track? Can't think of it right off. But it was one by 95 that I played all the time. We're just wearing out. Louis Vegas, that worked honest. We play that in all my videos. So it's like signature songs that every time you hear him on, the thing is probably going to be because he's the only one that cares about it. He plays them all the time. They were traditional type songs. I would always play them without fail. But those are one memory for me. Especially nervous. A lot of stuff that came out. Every time I record label, I grab it in the store, buy it, and wait till I get home. I wouldn't even listen to it in a record shop. I just take it home and play it because I know I'm buying. I know I'm playing it.
I can tell you this. Still to this day, one of my all-time favorites, and something back in the day I would always reach for to play in my mix. I don't care if I was recording at home or out somewhere. Was the song "Thousand Finger Man" by Candido.
You still play it?
That right there was the ultimate for me, especially back. I mean, I still love it to this day. That's something that could always. I'll probably go into a different world when I'm playing that. And then when I started thinking about the underground sound that we have now, one of the first songs I remember in the '80s that had. This is what started me loving that sound. That underground sound that we think of right now.
Right.
First song that I could think of that came out like that in the '80s was "Taste My Love" by Kim Ezell.
Massive.
That sound, I think about today's underground now with that smooth and the melody and singing and you know, you got the nice hard beat in the background that's been put together really nicely. That to me, even though it was put out on vinyl, I know it was out being played before it came out, but it was still put out on vinyl. I still think of it as being an underground type of sound. Now, true underground music, the original Sensation by Ron Hardy. And think about that track. And you just played it. We just had our I won't tell you how many years, our high school reunion. Right. And we were out on the final event was a Sunday afternoon picnic right by Lake Michigan. Beautiful, beautiful scene. You know, most of our classmates, Lloyd and I, with some other DJs that we played along. One of them was a well-known DJ, a big guy, Voodoo Master, for all of you know. He graduated with us from Julian High School in the south side of Chicago. And during Lloyd's set right here, he played that original Sensation. Now, Ron Hardy came out with a version on vinyl, on wax, that would be played on WBMX or, you know, WKKC. There was another college station back then for Northwestern University, WNUR. So that version would be played, you know, that you could go and buy in a record store. We all went and bought it, but it just wasn't the same as the original unreleased underground version that you can still play today, that will get anyone who's heard it before. You're going to get up and you're going to start moving. You won't be able to help yourself.
I remember that record. Final record.
Yep.
I had two of them. I still have it. Like vinyl record. I was sitting there thinking, I had you mention that. I remember 95 North played Still in the Night. By 95 North, I would play that all the time. But I'm glad you brought that up, man. Because like after 89, 90, 91, we're coming out the house era, fast Tyree Cooper. That's when that word was cranking real heavy, putting out a lot of stuff. And that was my first good taste of underground stuff, soulful stuff. Real real melodic stuff, man. It's your soul, man. We were playing the stuff on KKC and playing it in the club, stuff like that, man. And it just had a distinctive sound that you couldn't get nowhere else. So we loved it, and we were really trying that term underground. Y'all know about this. We gonna play this underground stuff, man. It was so different. Like I said, we're coming out of, the history of love, taste my love, that era, the house era. We were that stuff, but after the hip hop, a lot of people didn't think about. Mind you, a lot of people still stuck with disco, which is fine. That's cool. Right. A lot of people with this transition period coming out to late 80s, going into the 90s, the music started seeing a shift in the music. Right. When we started getting nervous, strictly rhythm, large records, R&R. You start getting into late, man. That was quickly out about. Yeah, artists that were producing stuff. Some of the same artists. We're buying this stuff. We're definitely calling that underground.
Well, to take it a step further, thinking about names, and for most of you don't know, I took a long hiatus from actually DJing. I was DJing after I left. I went to college, went away to school, and I would be doing parties at school. I went to Eastern Illinois, and I would do parties down there, whether it's private at someone's house or a fraternity or sorority's house, or at the University Union. We were able to rent out a big banquet room and have fraternity, sorority parties there. And a lot of times I got booked to DJ a big party down there. That was the way I kind of helped fund my way through school along with having a job. But I left Chicago in 1989. I would come back to visit here and there, but I got away from the scene, and when I came back after graduating, by that time I had lost a lot of my vinyl, and I didn't have the new equipment, so I took a long break from actually being actively DJing. And around 2007, can't tell you what pushed me back into it, but I just jumped back in and said, I'm just going to do this, because I want to say about 4 or 5 years or so, maybe 6 years leading up to 2007, I started getting into Chicago House Radio. There were a couple of other sites, deephousepage.com, where you could go and start listening to mixes of these certain DJs, and a few other DJs, because I listen to other DJs a lot. I talk to other DJs, and a lot of people don't listen to other people; they listen to their own mixes. Mm-hmm. I make it a point to listen to other DJs' mixes a lot. And I have certain favorites. I'm not above that. I'll listen to another DJ, any day. The newer underground sound, I want to say, starting in the late '90s and the early 2000s, grabbed me in a way that I hadn't been grabbed by music since the early '80s when I started. Okay. You mentioned hip house, that whole era. Of course, I loved it, but it didn't grab me as much as some of the classics and some of the things that came out in the early '80s. When I started listening to Deep House Page and Chicago House Radio in the early 2000s, before I got back into actively doing it, there were artists or groups like Blaze, Josh Milan. Right. Louis Vega was collaborating with them. Ron Trent, and some of the things he was putting out, and that whole sound, which I still think about, the Taste My Love, and that smooth melodic sound grabbed me and took me to a place. And I by the time 2007 came, I had already started building on my collection of that type of music. And I wasn't strictly underground, but that was the direction I was going. And then you and I reconnected in 2008.
Right.
If you don't mind, I could tell that story.
Oh, absolutely.
So we were leading up to our, I won't say how many years, high school reunion, and we were doing a fundraiser as a class at a skating rink in the Chicagoland area. And my best friend was actually the head of the committee, and he got a little skate party set up with Lloyd as a DJ, put me on, and I can't remember what it was. Someone else there with us. It was a Bulu.
Yeah.
The three of us as DJs for this event. Now, Lloyd and I hadn't talked in years. We lost contact, and I'll put that on me, going away to school and just getting wrapped up in trying to finish and getting back and trying to start a career and a family and everything. And I just was out of the whole era, out of the mix, out of just in my own world. Lloyd and I connected that day. It was almost as if we just graduated 2 days ago. Big hug, talked, conversed. Now, again, Lloyd, at that point, Chicago House Radio was 4 years in existence. And he's going strong with Chicago House Radio. And Lloyd and I started talking about music right there in the skating rink. And I remember trying to get him to understand that I knew about the new music, and I was still trying to keep up to date, and I knew what underground music was. And I started throwing out some of the names like Blaze and some of these names. And I remember him looking like, okay, all right. And we connected. I can't remember if it was a week or two later, and I couldn't believe, I was really honored that Lloyd offered me this to come on his station and mix, and then offered me a time slot and said, okay, you're gonna agree to this, you need to start doing mixes, and you think of a name of your show. And of course, it came to me, Operation Underground, because that was new thing at that point. So just wanted to tell that story, and I thank Lloyd all the time, and he knows it.
Yeah, man. That's all. During that time, around 2008, 2009, man, we would rotate in and out, around DJs off radio. It was awesome, man. It was a lot of people coming in and out. People that were coming in directly, and then a lot of jobs overseas. By that time, DJ Floyd was in Paris. He's still on the station today. Was on. We had the guys in Switzerland, the UDM show. Mark Shaw and Armando Gomez. They were spinning the UDM show. Underground Dance. That was the name of their show. They were spinning. You talking about consistency, man. I'm talking, man. Guys playing every week, not this show.
Yeah.
Paradise Ride been on since 2005. I think since DJ Lloyd might have missed maybe two shows. And we talking 2019.
My hat's off to him.
2005. He may have missed. I'm really not sure about that. He don't miss. Consistently, every week. His mix box. I have it. So when I look back, I have a single hard drive with just all his stuff, just all Paradise Rock. I mean, just loaded up. The guys consistent. Floyd has put out. He has some tracks himself. It has from time to put out. So, we're working on it. We're trying to get put some material out here.
I know.
So maybe later you go on the ranks with us.
I've made I told myself, and you've heard me say this many times, so you could probably twist your lips up on me, but I have some things I've started, and I want to do something at the latest by the end of the first quarter of next year. Have something that could be put out at the latest. So if earlier, that'd be even better.
We're gonna hold you to it.
Please do. you know you hold me to stuff, it happens. So
that's good, man. We'll start wrapping up. Let's talk about Rick.
I think the best way is I'm on Facebook as Bach Walters, but also my email address if you'd rather do that, and if you're not on Facebook, my first name on my driver's license is my social security is Volcoue, which is Volcoue. So Volcoue@gmail.com. So those are the two easiest ways to contact me, and I would love to hear from you all. And just a reminder, this afternoon we have a new Operation Underground mix that'll be airing at 3 p.m. Central Time. So
I'm open for that. Real soon. I guess we jump off and go down and upload that service so we can be all set by 3 p.m. with that, man. All right, man. It's been great talking with you, man. And like I say, we're gonna do this on a regular basis. I want to get one. Bring in all the crowds. We have a nice chat on how to get together. And also get some artists and they kind of crack open the code time. Just had that behind us. I think this is something that we don't get a chance to see. People just like to know the everyday dealing kind of coffee, the area where you live on a daily basis. What the life is like when you get up in the morning. We don't see a lot of times. We just hear the music. And so that's open to these calls, presentations, where we can talk about these things and give our producers and DJs exposure. So I would like to do this on a weekly basis. We're going to see how time goes in the participation and all that stuff. And then also taking the audio portion of the webinars and make a podcast out of that. You can have a few ways to get it. And also we're going to have a YouTube channel. You can get it there. Be sure to connect with us on Facebook, Chicago House Radio page, Facebook. Look us up on Chicago House Radio page. Join the conversation. You are welcome to comment, chat, as well as hit us on. You can get me. If you want to get in contact with me, you can get me on there. That's the easiest way. Otherwise, tonight, get down Saturday, 5 p.m. We're going to check that out. Operation Underground. We have a nice lineup. We start off early in the morning with the Deep House Cat, DJ File. He's on at 9 a.m., 11. Then after him, DJ File, we have Lloyd with Nice Garage. And then Fox up at 3 p.m. with Operation Underground. I think it's nice. You got a whole lineup. Want to get your music. I tell you another good way. If you don't have it, get the Live 365 app. You can put that on your phone. And have Chicago Radio back pocket. So get the Live 365 app. And install it on your phone, and then just say what favorite. You know what you're about. In your vehicle, place in the car, and all that good stuff. So that's about it. Thanks so much for on this call. We just did. And I asked goodies, man. So I'll save it.
Yeah, definitely.
Nice, man. We definitely got to do it again.
Definitely, and I always, I'm a thankful person. So thanks for having me, not only on this, but thanks for having me a part of the Chicago House Radio family. I appreciate you more than you know.
This is what we do, man.
Absolutely.
Take care, man. Operation Underground 3.
Sounds good. All right. Have a good day, everybody. Have a great weekend. All right.